Hello and welcome to my Precision Health Optimization, Prevention and Functional Medicine channel. Now, my name is Mirthe. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and my aim is to help you be more proactive with your own health. And I want to do that by sharing some scientific nuggets and dial them down into really easy tweaks that you can do in your daily lifestyle, daily diet, tweaking your supplements, your testing regime, so you can stay on track of your health and make educated choices so that you don't just feel like you're following another diet or another trend. But I want you to understand the science behind it and break it down for you so that you can then make choices whenever, as and when you want to live your best life. Now, I will be trying to post episodes on this weekly. This is new for me. So comment below what questions you have. If there are certain things that you've been Googling or hearing about and you just have been struggling with, or you haven't been able to find reliable information on, comment below, let me know what interests you. Today, I will just give a little overview of what functional medicine is, what precision health is, and how I practice it, and what this channel will be all about. Now, functional medicine tries to look at underlying triggers, the underlying biology of health versus disease. Now, rather than saying, okay, well, we have one, let's say, an autoimmune disease, that's where I'm coming from. I had Crohn's disease from an early childhood on, and knock on wood, thanks to functional medicine, it's gone into remission for the last 15 years. But so within functional medicine, we look at, okay, there's a predisposition for autoimmunity. Maybe there's a genetic predisposition. But rather than saying, okay, let's take certain drugs to suppress the immune system, which sometimes are necessary to do at the same time while fixing the underlying triggers, we then look at what are these underlying triggers? Why is the immune system overreacting? What's going on? So let's say in certain people, it can be gut imbalances, there can be food intolerances that just make the immune system overreact. And then if it comes together with a genetic predisposition for it, then all of a sudden there's this autoimmune disease. Within functional medicine, we try and look for these underlying triggers and make it very bespoke. We do testing rather than just guessing. That's the difference to, let's say, other healthcare practitioners that do wonderful work as well. But in functional medicine, we really want to test and see, okay, well, where is the underlying trigger rather than just trial and error. And then we try and remove these things. That's the same thing for cancers, cardiovascular disease, hormone issues, infertility, eczema, all these different symptoms and health concerns that can really lead to just not having such a big quality of life. Now, that's the functional medicine part. We look at the underlying triggers. And that's where then the next step comes into play is precision health, prevention and optimization. Now, that's when you might not have any issues yet, but you know that there might be Alzheimer's in the family or a predisposition for certain types of cancers, or you just want to be proactive and not run into any issues. Then you can start to look at what's going on inside my body so that it doesn't run into that problem. So you can be a bit more precise with your health approach. Again, you can do certain testing called predictive biomarker testing. Predictive biomarkers are certain markers that have been shown to be associated with bad health outcomes down the line if they're not in the right range. So let's say you can test for inflammation, hsCRP, and it's high sensitivity inflammatory marker. And if that one is a problem, inflammation has been linked, as you might know, inflammation has been linked to lots of different ill health outcomes, ranging from anxiety and depression to more severe things like Alzheimer's, heart disease, to cancers, autoimmune illnesses, osteoarthritis, lots of issues. So we don't really want to have inflammation in the body. So that would be an example for a predictive biomarker that is a really good gauge for where we're standing. And then we would say, if that's not right, we would say, well, then the functional medicine comes in and says, well, why is it not right? What's triggering the body to cause this inflammation? Is there a chronic underlying infection? Is there anything else that is constantly irritating the immune system to create this inflammation? Because in the end of the day, inflammation is normally a good thing because our immune system creates an inflammation when it's being attacked by an invader and to kill it off. Now, it only turns into a problem if that doesn't clear up so-called resolution. So if that immune system keeps staying activated for one reason or another, then we have this chronic lingering inflammation that has been linked to all these ill health outcomes. It's even been termed inflammaging because it's just got all these aging effects on lots of different things in our body that we don't want to have. So now you've done your predictive biomarker testing, you've run your inflammatory markers, maybe some vitamin D, maybe some free radical damage markers, things like that. But then how do you know they're optimal and not just okay? That's another big issue. And that's where what I will be talking about a lot as well in this channel is the difference between optimal and just okay markers. Now, you might have gone to your GP, or you've had an annual checkup, or you've done one of these health kits that are out there. They're popping up everywhere. You can buy a little health check, and you send off your blood, maybe even through a finger prick or through a blood draw. And then the doctor says everything's fine. But then 5 or 10 years down the line, all of a sudden there's a problem overnight. Now that's because our reference ranges that the labs use are mostly far too big. So let's say, as an example, vitamin D can be in the UK, we and in Europe mostly as well, we have it in nmol per liter, where in the US it's a different unit. So just make sure that you convert that. So over here, for example, a lot of labs will say anything between 30 and 200 vitamin D nmol per liter is fine. Now, research shows that all the good effects of vitamin D, meaning prevention and protection against bowel cancer, breast cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, lots of these chronic illnesses have been shown to be the body has more protection against it if vitamin D levels are higher. Now, that is not at a 30 nmol per liter. Let's say we have the reference range. This here is the low range. This is the top range. It's not down here. All the research says it's really in that highest percentage of the range. And for vitamin D in specific, it would be between 100 and 150 nmol per liter. That's where we get most effect and most protection, and we don't run into trouble down the line. So you might go to your doctor, your vitamin D is 35, and they say you're fine because you haven't fallen out of that big range yet, because you're not in, let's say, in danger right now. You're still functioning, but you're really close to it. And the other thing that we look at in functional medicine is that we look at the body as a cogwheel, like a machine with lots of different cogwheels. And you can think of them, they all need to run really smoothly so that everything works. Now, if there's something, let's say low vitamin D levels or below optimal, it starts to cause a little sludge in here, and then this doesn't work so well anymore. But then that has a knock-on effect on everything else. Or if there's a little bit of inflammation because there's a chronic lingering infection or whatever else it is, then all of a sudden these things don't work that well anymore, but it's not in danger yet. So you get your bloods done and everything's okay, but it's all already not optimal anymore. It's starting to kind of just not work in that smoothly anymore. So what we want to do then in precision health prevention, and what I will try and empower you to learn how to read these things in this channel, is to take it to the next level and say, wait, but am I optimal? And if I'm not optimal, what's happened? What's causing it? Let's say, for example, that inflammatory marker I mentioned before, hsCRP. Again, there's different reference ranges between the UK and the US. So let's just say if it's not in optimal ranges, you're not actively acutely inflamed. So that means that you don't have an acute infection. You're not currently ill. But if it's above optimal, it means that there's something chronically lingering. That can be something like an Epstein-Barr infection that keeps being reactivated in the body. Maybe you had glandular fever as a teenager, didn't notice it, but it keeps being reactivated. Or a cold sore herpes virus that is just lingering. HPV, human papilloma virus, is a common one as well. if they're just chronically reactivating in the system, it keeps our immune system constantly activated, but not at an acute state. So it won't be picked up in a normal test result. You have to then take it to that next level and say, wait, is it optimal? And if it's above optimal, that inflammatory mark, it means there's something going on. And then you want to dig at, why is it happening? Where's this inflammation coming from that I shouldn't really be having? And there can be lots of different reasons, and I'll be trying to talk about all these different topics in the next episodes. Let me know what you're interested in the comment section below. I'd really like to know what things you are interested in, what you would like me to elaborate on, because I obviously also don't want to make it too complicated. I want to make sure that you guys understand what I'm talking about and that you're getting the most benefit out of this. Okay, so now we've talked about how you can use predictive biomarker testing, run certain health panels to be more proactive about your health, but that you then also want to put it into that more stricter optimal versus suboptimal versus just a K reference range to really make sure that you're not running into trouble and you can optimize things. Now, there's a few other components to health optimization. For example, DNA health testing. They've become very popular over the last years, and they're a great little add-on tool. And I'm not talking about a genetic screen for called monogenetic disease, where one gene has a mutation and the baby's born and there's a big problem. No, I'm talking more about these subtle changes, small little genetic mutations called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms that can cause certain enzymes in the body not work as well potentially and make certain reactions go slower or faster. Examples for that can be, there's something called the ApoE4 gene that has been linked to a higher risk of Alzheimer's because there's a different metabolism in the body. Now, rather than just testing for that, which is what a lot of genetic companies do nowadays, and then say, go and test your brain capacity once in a while, and then once it starts deteriorating, we know that that is your issue. Do some crossword puzzles. Within functional medicine, we like to look at it a little bit more complex. Again, we like to say, okay, what does research say are contributing factors to Alzheimer's? Sorry. So research shows that Alzheimer's has a genetic predisposition to it in some cases, but there are other factors, our epigenetics, lifestyle factors, that can actually cause this to be triggered or not to be triggered. So just an example, some people that have Alzheimer's don't have the bad Alzheimer's gene, but they still have Alzheimer's, where other people that do have, the other way around. As an example, some people that have the Alzheimer's gene don't have Alzheimer's, but some other people that have Alzheimer's don't have the Alzheimer's gene. So you can see that it is not a direct correlation. And research shows that there are other factors involved, such as things like inflammation. Again, we talked about inflammation before. Research shows that having chronic inflammation throughout life has a much higher risk to developing Alzheimer's down the line. Or insulin problems, insulin resistance, which is has lots of factors, we'll talk about that in other episodes, has been linked to contributing to Alzheimer's down the line. Or sleep issues, having less of that deep sleep makes our brain not able to clear out those amyloid plaques, those toxins, and then that contributes to more risk of Alzheimer's development down the line. So rather than just saying our genetic test has shown an ApoE4 genetic mutation, now there's nothing you can do about it, sorry for you, we in functional medicine like to again be more proactive and say, okay, well, what are your inflammatory genetics? What are your insulin genetics? And what are your what's your current state? Because sometimes people, just by being in tune with their body, intuitively do the right things. They might intuitively have a lifestyle where they're really anti-inflammatory. They might intuitively have a lifestyle where their insulin levels are perfect. They're getting tons of deep sleep. So they might not actually be running into that problem. So rather than saying, okay, this is our genetic risk, now that's it. In functional medicine, the way we look at DNA testing is we say, okay, these are certain risk factors. Now let's look at it in that bigger picture. there's inflammation, there's insulin resistance, all these things that can lead to Alzheimer's trouble. Let's test for them. Let's check, what is your insulin? What is your inflammation? What are certain nutrients like omega-3 that has been shown to be preventative of Alzheimer's? What are your levels? Do we need to supplement? Do we need to support? Do you need more sleep? Do you need to do stress reduction? Do you need to change your diet so that your cells become less insulin resistant and become more sensitive? All these different things have a tremendous effect. And then rather than scaring you and saying, these are your genetics, there you go, see you later, they become very helpful tools, and you can again become the CEO of your health. You can make choices. You can then say, okay, another example that I quite like is there are certain breast cancer genes, and I'm not talking about the BRCA gene because that's too loaded for today, but there's certain other genes where the body might not be able to break down estrogen so well. So breast cancer oftentimes actually has much to do with, if it's estrogen related, with how the body's breaking estrogen down, not so much or not only with how much estrogen there is in total. Now, a common problem for estrogen related cancers is that the body's breaking estrogen down into the wrong version, not into the good protective version. Now, there can be genetics that make us more prone towards one or the other. Now, if we know that, we can then say, let's do a urine test, because in urine you can test how the body's breaking down estrogen, whether we're currently breaking it down into the protective form or into the bad form. Are we currently utilizing our bad genes, the ones that break it down into the toxic form, or are we actually currently doing the right things, such as eating lots of cruciferous vegetables, not being exposed to tons of plastics, tons of synthetic skincare products, all these things that actually have been shown to change our environment to be more prone to turn it into the toxic version. We can test that. We can do a urine test called Dutch test, dried urine test, see, does the body break it down into the protective form or into the toxic form? And then if we know that, then we can make changes. We can say, okay, what things in our lifestyle, which supplements, which dietary changes help to strengthen that pathway, the protective one, and turn down the toxic one. And then we can retest and make it, again, more proactive, more we can become the CEO of our health and make sure that we can make choices rather than feeling like, okay, well, I have a breast cancer gene and this is really scary. And again, I'm not talking about BRCA here, maybe some other time, big topic. And while we're at the topic of genetic testing, one other thing that I would like to just a word of caution is that you obviously can do these great genetic tests nowadays at fairly cheap rates. And but some of them will then recommend taking certain supplements. They'll say, as an example, you're genetically more prone to low zinc levels because you're genetically more prone to peeing out zinc if you're stressed out. So you should take a zinc supplement. However, you might, like I said before, there's always whether you're actually turning that gene on or not, whether you're doing it right or not. We don't really know from just testing our genetics. So your zinc levels might be optimal, and then you're adding in a ton of extra zinc all the time by buying a supplement to do that. But there's actually a problem with that, because if we are zinc and copper, both are really important. I don't know if you heard of them, but they're both important for our immune system, for lots of other functions inside our bodies, not just zinc. There's also copper. There's also lots of other things in our body. The problem is that they compete for absorption. Now, if we take a ton of zinc, the body often gets depleted in copper because it's just not absorbing it. Even if both somehow manage to get in, if we're getting too much zinc, it can cause damage inside the body. So we don't want that. I see that a lot with people, especially after the COVID pandemic. People were reading on the news that they should be taking zinc to help with COVID. And it's true, if someone is low in zinc or not optimal, they should take some zinc or eat more zinc-rich foods. But it's important to test these things. And if there's a genetic test that says you're more prone to low zinc levels, I urge you to test your zinc before you start supplementing, because you don't know whether you are expressing this gene or whether you're actually doing everything intuitively just right. Now, I will leave you with that for this first episode of my Precision Health Optimization, Prevention, and Functional Medicine channel. I would love your feedback. Comment below, share it if you like, and let me know what other topics you would like for me to discuss if you have questions. And I will try and jump on once a week and have more dial down some research for you in a really easily digestible way. And hopefully, you can then become empowered to take care of your health from a very science based perspective.